So, my wife and I arrive at the hospital on the 19th. My wife had contractions the entire day, starting at 4 a.m. She was in a lot of pain, but she wanted to make sure that she wasn't going to be turned away at the door. We had heard some stories about how hospitals have sent pregnant women who thought they were ready to give birth, sent them home because perhaps their contractions weren't deep enough, or it wasn't necessarily imminent that the baby was coming out. Now, we're first-time parents, and we don't really know precisely what the signs are, just from the advice we've been given by some healthcare professionals, as well as what we found online, and family, obviously. So my wife is a tough woman. I don't know if you've ever met Japanese women or Japanese people. Some people said they were the toughest soldiers in World War II. And there's this sort of samurai spirit in them. So my wife, basically for the whole day before Alice was born, just toughed it out. When we finally got to the hospital, of course the hospital had special alerts and precautions because of the coronavirus. They weren't allowing visitors to visit women in delivery. The cafeteria was closed. They were checking everyone's temperature with the special equipment, I believe infrared, some scanner that they hit my forehead with. And we're not hospital and doctor's office people. We're fairly healthy, thankfully, knock on wood, that will continue so. And also my philosophy is not to run to the doctors or hospitals as soon as I need anything, unless it is necessary. So for me, going into the hospital, particularly into the very belly of the hospital, and with such an involved process as delivering a baby, it was a real eye-opener, needless to say, about how nurses and doctors work, and how the system works, and how you fit into that as a patient and as a patient's assistant. Anyways, I'll talk about that more as this video goes along. So we come in, and when they see how much pain she's in, they say, you should have came in a long time ago. So here we were worried that we were going to come in too early, but according to them, we should have came in a long time ago. In any case, they admit us into one of the delivery rooms. I believe that the delivery room was 320. This is at Whittier Medical Center in Southern California. And they want to know a lot of her details, all about the prenatal care, what the sonograms had shown in her previous visits to her prenatal care physician. Now, we didn't have those documents with us, and so they sort of looked at us like, what the hell? You came to this hospital and you didn't bring your sonograms, you didn't bring your prenatal care, you didn't bring a lot of things. Like, I think they had some expectations that we would know exactly how to handle this whole thing. And perhaps for you out there, that's a no-brainer. But for us, we're more of a natural approach, not over-worrying about every incessant detail of how this thing would play out, and sort of trusting her body and how she felt. And of course, we had prenatal care, but some of it she had in Japan, and that was in Japanese, which would do them no good. And then our doctor's office didn't send the documents over to the hospital. I don't know if that was something that we were supposed to do, or if that was something they were supposed to do, but with anything, with life, some things fall through the cracks, and some things you have to learn as you go along. So we were learning that there was a lot of things that they wanted to know that we didn't have the information for them. So my wife, she's Japanese, and she speaks English better than when she first moved to America, but she's not fluent, and there's a lot of idiomatic expressions and phrases and subtle nuances in English that she relies on me to translate to her, or sometimes just for me to answer questions for her. So her being in a lot of pain, and the nurse is asking technical questions and she doesn't understand what they're saying, I, of course, do what I do and I jump in and answer the questions for her just to make it a smoother process. This is just how our relationship works. I'm taller than her, and so if she needs something on the top shelf, I grab it for her. And when it comes to English questions that need to be answered quickly, I answer them for her. Not all the time. Sometimes I let her do it just because, you need to struggle a little bit to improve your skill in anything. But in this situation, I answered a lot of the questions that the nurses wanted to know. Now, this sort of was a red flag to some of the nurses. I don't know why. But they did not like the fact that I was answering some of her questions. The only reason I know that is that our nurse that we had the entire night before the delivery, so we got there on the 19th in the evening, and we gave birth to Alice the following morning. So we had a nurse watch over her throughout the entire night. She was a Cantonese nurse. And she was extremely amazing, just an incredible personality, a little clumsy with the IAV, but a professional, really helpful, really honest, and someone that I felt we could trust. And she must have trusted us because she told us that the nurses were a little sketched out that I was answering Yukiko's questions, and that made sense because I remember going to the cafeteria to grab coffee, or maybe it was water, and I had some weird looks by some of the nurses. One nurse with long black hair in particular gave me these weird look, and so that wasn't a very good thing to hear, that they were concerned, that I was answering my wife's questions, trying to help her out, but it is what it is. So, she spent the night and she got an epidural. Now, when she got the epidural, at first we wanted to give birth without an epidural, without any pain medication, just because we feel that as close to nature is probably best. Of course, we've never had a baby. She's never had this pain. And when it was pretty apparent that she wasn't going to be able to get any rest and was not going to be able to deliver the baby till the next day and would need all the energy she could possibly give, and they assured us, the nurse did, that the epidural was safe and that it wouldn't leach into her breast milk or into the baby. Me and my wife said, yeah, let's go ahead and get you some relief so you're not in pain the whole night. Which is what we did. Now, it was funny because she told us the anesthesiologist that would administer the epidural was exquisitely a professional, very good. But she also warned my wife. She said, please do not disobey the anesthesiologist. Do not move around when he comes in because they're very worried that if any sort of mistake or error occurs during the procedure, bad consequences could happen, such as paralysis, or perhaps even worse, and they could lose their license or be sued. So if they find a woman is squirming too much, they'll just leave the room. So we said, okay, sounds good, let's do that. Let's get the anesthesiologist in and get this epidural so my wife could perhaps get a little rest before she has to give the big push and get Alice out. So and I should mention that her contractions are going, they have heart monitors on her belly so you can hear the heartbeat. Boom, 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 boom. Nice strong heart. And you can see there's an electronic machine that reads the contractions and you can see how regular they are. All of that's going great. The anesthesiologist comes in, a nice guy, I believe from Mauritius, and I don't want to call an older man cute, but he was cute, man. I mean, he just had this real sweet, or not a sweet, but just a really cute personality. And I assisted and put Yukiko on the precise area of the bed that he wanted her. Not too far this way, not too far that way, exactly there. He was very specific. So she's there. And for this procedure, he wanted me out of the room. No problem. Although I was a little, hey, you got to get out of the room, get out of the room. Everyone will he'll probably do a better job. Anyways, I had no choice. So I get out of the room. So I'm sitting outside listening to how everything's going. And he just says, they start the procedure, and he says, stop moving. No, really, you got to stop moving. And the nurse starts saying, listen to him, stop moving, sweetie. No, you can't move. Oh no. And he gets finally, okay, it's finished. Oh, you really made me sweat. So, I'm out. I don't even see what's going on. I'm just outside the room listening, sitting on a chair. I'm sweating outside, Paralysis or worse is at stake. Or she might not get the epidural if she keeps moving. That's what we were warned. And anyways, my wife made him sweat. So my wife is a funny woman. She's the most pleasant, sweetest girl, but she can keep you guessing at times. And I'm sure it wasn't because she was trying to make problems. I'm sure it was very uncomfortable for her. Anyways, she gets the epidural. She gets relief, and it becomes a lot more pleasant of a room. The nurses wanted to give her some type of synthetic hormone that would help her contractions, and we had denied that, even though they said... we had denied it because the first nurse, I asked her, are there any side effects? And she said sometimes the baby's heart rate will drop. I was like, well... And they said we can turn it off. I'm like, well, anything that's going to make my baby's heart rate drop, I don't want to put any of that in there. I'd rather just take a little bit more time. And then another nurse said, oh, no, there's no side effects. So we were sort of getting these contrasting messages sometimes from the nurses throughout the entire process. Very interesting. This isn't a knock. This is just, of course, that's with any profession. You're going to get different opinions. But for parents who aren't exactly well educated in terms of pharmaceuticals, medicine, and all of their effects on the birthing process, including the mother's health and the child's health, it's sort of interesting to sort of wade through all of these opinions and details and try to make the best decision possible. So we decided not to do the artificial hormone at first, because her contractions were very regular. Now, fast forward to the next day. It is now the morning. We have a new nurse. So our lovely Cantonese nurse leaves us, which is sad. I really, really liked her. But we got a new nurse, sort of a grandmotherly, matronly Latina, who was amazing. Maria. She was amazing. Really calm presence, very helpful, and not as loud as the Cantonese nurse was, but a very calm, reassuring presence. And so it was her job to help Yukiko start to push the baby, really start push. So she was coaching her, coaching me, where to hold Yukiko, where to support her legs, where to support her arms, where Yukiko should grab, all these various positions, reading the chart of her contractions and letting us know how everything's going. There was also, I should mention, that they had a person do a sonogram in the middle of the night just to let the doctor know some more details that he wanted. Now, they asked us about a lot of things. Do you want a vitamin K shot? Do you want vaccines? Do you want lots of things? Now, I will mention one thing that they asked us is they wanted to give, and forgive me because I don't have the information right in front of me, they wanted to know if they could put an antibiotic, I believe, on the baby's face, on the baby's eyes, as it came out of the womb. Because apparently there's some women who have some type of vaginal disease that can occur. I forget the exact name. And so the antibiotic keeps the baby safe from contracting that disease. But one of the... And they really recommended that. They said, you should get it, because we don't know if your wife has it. They took some of my wife's blood in the night, but the laboratory was closed until the following morning. So we wouldn't find out. I don't actually know how they administer the antibiotics. If they administer it into my wife or the baby. In any case, we didn't get the antibiotic because I asked them for time. Everything they asked us, I just said, please, can you just give us a couple minutes? We wanted to discuss it in private. And then I would research it on my phone and see what studies I can find and, pros and cons from people's experiences. And what I read online, there were some studies about this antibiotic that they give, and they found that the gut biome of the babies that receive it are significantly negatively impacted in their first, I think 5 weeks of life, maybe even more, which the paper went on to say that those are a very critical time for the baby's immune system. And the gut biome is related to that. And so it seemed like it was, a risk either way. If we got the antibiotic, then the baby would be safe if my wife had this vaginal disease that they were worried about. Now, but while my child would be safe from the vaginal disease, my baby's gut biome would most likely, if not assuredly, be negatively impacted. So, you're damned if you do, and if you don't, then the baby, and my wife does have this vaginal disease, then the baby will contract it, possibly, and then they're going to have to treat this disease for this newborn, which is a nightmare. So they really wanted her to get it, but we talked about it, and I said, babe, do you got a vaginal disease? She said, nope, I don't want it. I said, I don't want it either, and so we didn't do it. Now, that wasn't medical advice we were getting from our nurses, but that was our decision as parents. Luckily, in the morning when the lab opened and they ran the test, my wife was negative, so we didn't even need the antibiotics. And thank God we did not get it when they wanted to give it, because they were going to have to give it before the baby came out. So we would have negatively impacted our baby's gut biome for no reason, just to let the doctors and nurses sort of have their way with their advice, which is just crazy to me. Just absolutely crazy to me that it was pushed like that. And the doctor was actually he was a nice guy. He was a tall Mexican guy. I don't know. He could be Spanish, Latino, and he was concerned that we weren't going to get it. But in any case, the lab results came back. We didn't get it, and thank God for that. The doctor was not really friendly at first. He didn't really look us in the eyes, and could be that we skipped one of his doctor's appointments. My wife and I decided, with the coronavirus going on and everything being healthy with the baby, it was probably a good idea not to go to an appointment with him. I don't know if he was upset about that, or if he was upset that he didn't have a lot of prenatal information from us, and so that the situation might have been a little chaotic for him. I don't know if he was upset that we didn't take the advice and get the antibiotic. I don't know. But he wasn't very friendly. And so him and my wife didn't really get off to a good start. My wife was not happy. It's crazy. We had great experience with Maria and the Cantonese nurse, but the doctor just sort of came in, not very friendly, just sort of stuck his hands in my wife's vagina with the gloves and just said, she ain't pushing, and then just left. I mean, it was a very kind of a shitty way to meet your delivery doctor. But I will say that by the end of our entire stay, I was very pleased with the doctor and very happy with him. But just sometimes initial impressions are tough. I try to let my wife know, don't worry, baby, just go along. Don't worry, he's a professional. The nurses say he's a great doctor, so let's trust him. Trust the nurses, which is probably a good thing to do. But not in every case, like those antibiotics that they wanted to give to my baby, which would have destroyed her gut biome. All right, anyways, enough about that. So Maria feels pressure from the doctor. The doctor thinks my wife's not doing a good job of pushing. The baby's not progressing enough, even though she has contractions. So Maria convinces us to start to use the synthetic hormone that would help her contract a little bit more, perhaps. And so we did. The The doctor wanted her to push faster, didn't think she was doing it, so if the hormone would help, and if it was safe. Anyways, you gotta make some concessions in life, so we did. And finally, it got to the point where a lock of her hair came out, and that was amazing. I couldn't believe it. My world was being blown. Maria would show me my little baby's head coming out, poking out just a little bit, just the tip of it, and that was amazing. The doctor comes in with more assistance, and it finally comes time, and the baby is sunny side up. And so that Maria told us after that one of the reasons the baby wasn't coming out as fast as they had wanted was because the baby, which they didn't actually know, even though they did the sonogram and whatnot, was that the baby was sunny side up coming out instead of face down, which is a little bit more difficult. And then I found out from my mom, I was actually that way as well. So the baby, Alice, comes out, the doctor, so push, 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 and Yukiko's pushing. They took her off the epidural so that she could really feel it. Push, push, push. The doctor pulls out, and when he pulls up little Alice, I've never seen anything like it. I've never seen anything like it. The only thing I can compare it to is a psychedelic experience where something is so raw, so vivid, so powerful. It was to see not only new life, but to see new life that was created by you and your wife. I guess the way I feel is that I would say it was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. But it was also one of the most profound things I've ever seen, because we all know from biology class or from observing nature how life comes into this world, but to see it firsthand with human life is to see that it's a bloody, messy affair, and that it takes a team of people, and that it takes pain, and that it takes pushing and screaming and then crying. This life form comes out into this world, this new life into this world, Alice, and she's got her umbilical cord, and they have me cut it. To see that, I can't do it justice in this video, but it was profoundly powerful, and I think that image, when I first saw her, will be etched in my memory for the rest of my life, and I'll probably reflect on it more and more as I grow older. And even the nurses who work there and do this as their job, I mean, they tell us that it can be quite a powerful experience, even though it's not their baby and they do it all the time. It was absolutely beautiful. I never saw something so beautiful as that baby when it came out. And I knew that for the rest of my life, I would love that little human more than anything in the world. And it was my responsibility to take care of her and help her in this world. And the imagery and the feelings coalesced into what I would describe as a psychedelic moment. And I felt blessed. Blessed beyond belief. Why should I be so lucky to have an experience like this? To have a healthy, beautiful girl come into this world. A beautiful girl. All her fingers, all her toes. No problems. And her cry is beautiful, and her skin is beautiful, and everything about her. Full head of hair. I just felt my wife was safe. I just felt so blessed. And I am. and I am. So, with that, we were allowed a little quiet time where the baby was put on to her mother's stomach, my wife's stomach, skin to skin, and they got a chance to be acquainted. We all got a chance to be acquainted. And tests were done, on my wife, my baby. I will say this, I in this video, if I criticize doctors, nurses, hospitals, they do they do an amazing job to make sure that everyone is well taken care of. Everyone is well taken care of. That everyone's, even me, I'm not even having anything, but they want to make sure I'm taken care of. And I can see why certain people are drawn to the profession of healthcare. I mean, these are extremely nurturing people. The most nurturing system I've ever been in. And they're great at it. They're black belts at it. It was amazing to watch. And we were sent over to another room eventually, where we were allowed to we had a private room with 2 beds, and where they brought my wife food, and the cafeteria was unfortunately closed, and they didn't encourage me leaving the hospital because of the coronavirus. So I was stuck with the vending machine, and then my wife's leftovers. So I ate scraps. Although my wife wanted to give me hers, of course I wasn't. She needed all the energy she could have. Which I wasn't that hungry anyways. I didn't do anything. So we enjoyed our time with our baby. Now, first-time parents, and not really knowing what to do with newborns, I got scared a lot of the time during the day when my baby would start. It seemed like she was having trouble breathing, spitting up fluid, and I found out later that my baby had swallowed a lot of amniotic fluid coming out, I guess, of the birth canal, and so her body would naturally be sort of ejecting this material, and that was normal, and just to put the baby on the side or give her a nice pat or cough if she needed to burp and stuff like that. So we started off a little worried, a little nervous, but the nurses were so good and so helpful at teaching us what we needed to know, like how to swaddle, how to do things. Of course, the baby had to be brought out for certain tests, hearing tests, respiratory tests, things like that, which she passed with flying colors. Now, as amazing as the nurses were and are, and they were, very unusual thing happened. I mean, I guess it wasn't. I talked to the director the next day about it, and I'll go into that a little bit later. Not that unusual for the hospital, but unusual for me and my wife. This is the happiest day of our life. March 20th, 2020. Our baby's born. We have this day to spend with our baby the entire day. No TV, no distraction, just us and our baby. I've got a nice camera, and it's just a nice feeling in the room. The nurses come in to take care of my wife, to take care of the baby. It was around 11:30 p.m., so about 12 hours after, about 13 hours after my wife gave birth. She hasn't slept at all. She's tired, obviously. She had pain and contractions the whole day before. I didn't sleep much the night before, although maybe a wink or two with epidural. I go out to oversee to observe one of my baby's tests. And they give my wife a bunch of papers to fill out. Now, one of those papers is, I believe it's called the Edinburgh test, the Eisenberg test, something with an E. And it's basically a mental health survey where you answer 10 questions or so, standardized questions. And my wife, like I said, she speaks English, she can read English, but it's not her first language. She's not fluent whatsoever. And she doesn't even she had a lot of papers, and on this Edinburgh thing, she told me she just filled it at random. 11:30 at night, tired as hell. not her language, doesn't understand it, just circled some random questions. And apparently one of those questions alerted them that she was at risk of harming herself. So, serious subject, right? Maybe she should have taken a little more care with the survey, and actually read the questions, or asked for a Japanese test. I think she asked for a Japanese test, and they said they didn't have it. She told me that she did. But they had a Chinese survey and a Spanish survey. They didn't have a Japanese. And the funny thing is I don't know if you remember at the beginning of the video, I said our Chinese nurse had alerted me that some of the nurses, particularly this one with long black hair, she was the nursing manager during the night, was concerned that I was answering questions. Well, one of the reasons I answer some of the English questions for my wife is not to falsify information and not to control information, just to help her out. More than anything, I act as sort of a translator for her. So I don't know if this was a setup. You know, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I'm also an honest person, and, you know, humans are humans. The nurse gave her those things while I was observing the test, and so I couldn't help her. She answers the survey, and as a result, the same nurse that I said gave me those weird looks, and the Cantonese nurse, I think, had referred to her, saying that she was a little worried about me. She comes in and tells me that because of my wife's answers on this survey, me and my wife are in the room, they are now going to require a sitter in the room. And I say, what? Are you kidding me? Now, this is the happiest day of my life, and all of a sudden I'm being told that my wife's in danger of hurting herself. And I should say that my wife's probably one of the most pleasant people I know, one of the most even-keeled people I know, one of the people I would say most people would say least likely to do anything like that. Now, I'm a little more temperamental. Maybe they should have a sitter for me. Just kidding. But they're telling me this. So I try to explain that my wife doesn't speak really good English, as I find out that where this idea came from, that they're having this survey. But I really had this weird feeling with this nurse, as she's like, yeah, like I've got, like she had some weird satisfaction about this. I don't know if that was me projecting something on her or what, but that's how I felt. That's how I perceived. I felt like a weird spiritual battle in a way. So I stood my ground and I said, that's ridiculous. My wife's not... Ask my wife. Ask my wife. She's not... This is the happiest day of her life. And you want someone to sit in the room? And she goes and talks to the director. But as it came out, there was nothing we could do to make this go away. So, all right. It's not how I would like it to go, but this is what's happening. And so they had a nurse sit the entire night in our room, sitting in a chair in the dark, watching us. Now, I will say this. The nurse was very nice, very pleasant, personable, and ended up being extraordinarily helpful. She, I was pissed off to find out that she was going to be in this room, the fact that she was in this room, but over the course of the night, we had, a few worries about our baby, the baby crying, is she hungry, what do we do? And the nurse, even though because she's not a full-blown qualified RN or whatever, that, I don't know all the qualifications, she wasn't allowed to handle the baby, but she's a mother, and she knows this subject quite well, so she was a huge boon, which is weird. It's like sometimes evil is used for good, or evil turns into good. The yin turns into the yang, the silver lining on the dark cloud. This dark cloud, which I thought was absolutely horrible that there was going to be a sitter in the room, turned out to be a huge blessing, because there was half a dozen times, at least in the night, where her advice was amazing. And she imparted some wisdom to us to how to handle the baby. So by the end of the morning, I was quite happy. By the time the next morning came, the 21st, I was happy that she was in the room. although I'm not happy about how it all came about. And then she was replaced by another nurse during the daytime, a young nurse. We talked about this. She was very personable. She was young, probably 20. She wasn't even finished with college. She was amazing, very open, and we talked a lot. And so I got over it because I was happy that, that the nurse was in there overall. I always find, this is just a side note, that some of the things that always appear negative always end up being great in the long term. And this was one of those things. And so we have our special meal. This is like the following day lunchtime. And the sitter's there. And this is like this special meal that both the woman and the partner get to enjoy. They don't have champagne, but they have Martinelli's, apple cider, and they've got meatballs, green beans, rice, salad, ice cream. And I was eating nothing but scraps for 2 days. This was wonderful. Tasted delicious. And we're just in the middle, just enjoying, celebrating. Here's our baby. And we're going to get to go home today. And right in the middle, my wife has to answer a phone call by a social worker. Now, God bless social workers. God bless there are women and men and systems that take care of kids and, families that need help. We're not that family. But because of that damn survey, which my wife perhaps should have taken a little more time, but do consider she had a whole day of pain and contractions, a night of very little, maybe a wink or two of sleep, then birthed the baby, no sleep at all that day, and then was given this survey at 11:30 in a language that's not her own. She can't be, and amidst other papers, she just circled at something. And my wife's capricious by nature, in some ways. So, yeah, we're a part of it, but damn, man, you make one little mistake in any sort of system, and now you're on a conveyor belt and you can't stop it. And that's how I felt this whole thing was playing out. So now we're getting interrupted during our special meal by a social worker who's asking my wife questions, and my wife, by this time, she's taking it seriously. Not even seriously, but sincerely. And she just answers the social worker very honestly and happily, and lets her know that there's absolutely no problem, that she didn't understand it, that the nurse didn't give her the form in Japanese which she requested, and that there was no problem at all. And so with that phone call having taken place, I'm upset that they keep interrupting, just constant interruptions. In the most pleasant of moments, skin to skin, my wife's breastfeeding, lots of... Nurses are angels. The nurses and doctors the medical professionals that we met for the most part were absolutely angels and incredibly helpful and nurturing. But the system was a bit mechanical, and I guess anything that has to be done on large scale and has to be systematized to make it efficient, but it was a bit machine-like, and constant interruptions at private moments, including someone sitting in your room all night in the dark, who ended up helping. But anyways, I still have mixed feelings about it, and eventually the social worker decided it wasn't necessary, and the sitter got to leave our room, and we finally got some privacy. And then the social worker wanted to talk to me, so I went to the nurse's station, had a nice conversation with her where I expressed how I felt about it very honestly, and she apologized and told me that absolutely... Oh, so what had happened before I talked to the social worker, there was a Korean nurse in another department who went online, found the survey in Japanese, gave it to my wife. She answered it in her own language, also after having some rest, and there was no problem. And so the social worker tells me that they will have a Japanese file on hand and will not give people surveys unless they can understand them. She apologized and told me that they would make sure this wouldn't happen to anyone. And she was genuine. And so I felt, and I guess, for a lot of you out here, you're just saying, this is how the world works, Ryan. Well, I'm an idealist. I believe in nature and the natural system. Yeah, and I sort of bemoan the more mechanized our world becomes. And the more we're treated as numbers. This is something I don't like. But I at least saw that the people operating in the system were genuine and they actually had the best interest. And I understand why they have systems. And I talked to one of the nurses that sat in the room, this young nurse, and she said that there are a lot of women who come in with abusive spouses or perhaps severe depression and suicide, that there's a homeless woman who's come to the hospital 7 times to give birth because that's the only place she can get a good meal and get a lot of care for a few days. So there's a lot of cases out there. And so they have precautions precisely for dangerous situations, and somehow we had fallen onto that track. For someone who finds this subject fascinating, the mechanization of the world and our attempts to systematize how we treat humans, which happens as we ever increasingly organize our world and as technology increases. It was fascinating to be a part of it and to see it. But I was reassured that the humans operating in it were good-hearted and were genuine and were helpful. So, the day goes through, everything checks out great with the baby, with my wife, we're finally allowed to leave, and we got, the hospital gave us a car seat, and we drove home, and now we're a happy family, much happier to be home. And I will say that as nice and nurturing as the nurses were, for me, I like privacy, especially special moments. I don't like the happiest day of my life to be interrupted by sitters who are going to watch me the whole night. My last name's Freeman, and my temperament is for freedom. I don't want a sitter. Unnecessary tension. Sometimes I feel that our society and our attempts to solve problems, we cause a lot more. But I'll save that for another rant. Guys, I'm happy to bring a new life form into this world. I promise you I will do my best to raise her, at least with the virtues of honesty and love and a passion for freedom and expression. And I look forward to my life with my baby girl. And I look forward to perhaps brothers and sisters down the way, but let me have a little time alone with my baby girl and my wife. And thank you for watching this video. It was very long. I didn't plan to say all of that. It just sort of came out how it was. Remember, my opinions, my experience, my perception, not necessarily going to be the same for everyone. We all have different natures, different temperaments, different perspectives. So I try to give it to you as truthful and as honestly as I could. And thank you for watching. If you like this video, click like, click subscribe. And I appreciate watching. I look forward to bringing you another video in the near future. Bye.